Cause I've been on every single song I put my pen on. No, they don't know, or maybe they starting to. Cause I work so hard that it's hard to lose. Top spot, I'm taking that face to face. Got a bottle in my hand, I'm facing that. Cause if winning is a habit, then I've been an addict. Every night it's cinematic. When you roll with us, and we won't live forever. But I will remember when I met you in the summer. And I came to your town. We fell in love. Then we burned it to the ground. And we could be together, baby. But I gotta leave soon. And everybody's listening now. But we got nothing to lose. When I met you in the summer. When I met you in the summer. When I met you in the summertime with your fine ass, Merlot in that wine glass. She dope as hell from Jersey, baby. White girl, but the curves are crazy, and she up all night like Adderall. She like sushi too, we compatible. And these other guys average, so they mad.
Okay. Yeah, now you can hear us.
It's delayed, so let's see. Yeah, no.
But it's through this, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can cut and edit that. So welcome to the 23rd episode of the Justin Spaulding Show. Here with my dad, Scott Spaulding. Threw him in last minute. I gave him maybe like a 8-hour, 12-hour heads up that he was going to be on today.
I spent a lot of time preparing.
Yeah. So there goes. We're going to try this out. Didn't work. Maudine. I'm going to blame that one on Maudine. Chalk that one up in the L column. So, I don't know. Maybe we can start by, Dad, if you want to just give some people. I know I post a lot of things with my family, and I don't know that all, a handful of my followers, I don't know if they know what you do or don't do, or, just what you're involved in. But if you want to maybe just share a little bit about yourself and your story, and then we can kind of just take it from there.
So share my story. I can absolutely do that. So I'm a practicing veterinarian, practiced veterinary medicine for almost 30 years in Rock County, Wisconsin. It was something real natural for me to do. I grew up as a farm kid. Always thought that you had to be some superhuman being to be a veterinarian. But my life's journey just really worked out that way. Established a substantial practice of veterinary medicine in Rock County, mixed animal practice. Myself, I work primarily on horses as a practicing veterinarian. And other large animals, so a fair amount of livestock. And the business grew, and we did very well. Operating our 3 locations, we had about 10 doctors and probably, 50 or 60 employees altogether. At a point in time, it became apparent to me that the practice could get bigger. And so Justin and I, we started working on a project called Mavana, Mixed Animal Veterinary Associates North America, and it was the idea of aggregating more veterinary practices under one corporate umbrella. Had initial discussion with 6 or 8 practices, and in a very short period of time, we agreed that in principle to merge our practices. Started sharing our story across the country, and in a few weeks period of time, we had dozens or maybe even 100 veterinary practices that were interested in joining us. So we slowed down a little bit, and we closed a merger of 21 veterinary practices in about a dozen different states, I guess, on January 1st of 2017. Initially, there were about 45 shareholders in that company. Over a 3 or 4 year period of time, we grew that to about nearly 40 practices, 90 shareholders. We had about 1,000 employees, and it got to be a lot to manage, a lot to handle, to keep it growing. Had the opportunity to sell the business, and we sold the business September 30th of 2020. Yeah. A little over 6 months ago.
The 3-day closing.
The 3-day closing. The Movano organization was purchased by a corporate aggregator that was based in Connecticut. At the time, owned about 200 veterinary practices, and they are backed by a large private equity firm out of Manhattan. So it was quite the story. Happened really rapidly.
Yep. So learned a lot from him. Best friend, and he's involved in the real estate stuff as well. So when I bought that first 4 unit that some of you guys are familiar with, I threw in 20, and then him and my mom and my sister came up with that other $20,000 essentially, and so they invested. It wasn't a loan; they're invested, and that's grown substantially for obviously myself and them and our entire family. And then he's become a little bit more engaged with even like the higher level stuff with Spaulding Group and helping some employees out and with some structural things and infrastructure things, and same thing with Prime Painters. So, and he's part owner in Prime Painters as well. So yeah, get to work together a lot. I think I knew I didn't want to be a veterinarian by the time I was like 6 years old, because I'd go out to the farm with Dad all the time, and run around and play with other kids or whatever, but just saw all the long hours, and which I work long hours anyways. But I don't know. I knew I didn't really want to be a vet. I think maybe by that time I was maybe 9 or 10 maybe.
Yeah, I remember you'd spend a lot of time with me on farm calls, and know which farms and which kids had the best Nintendo games and
best
playground equipment.
Yep. Sports equipment. Knew which of the farmers' kids were into sports and play some baseball or basketball or football while they were out taking care of the animals. Sometimes there'd be cows like running through the side of barns and stuff like that. So a lot of really good memories there.
At the Riley farm. I remember that day.
Yep. So a lot of good stories there. So
and I remember one of the favorite things to do would be those days we get those big snowstorms. This is when you were really little, and I'd like to go in my 4-wheel drive truck and just go driving fast on the roads before they were plowed, go busting through the snow drifts.
Yep. Send snow flying everywhere, right? So I know Maudine, I think, posted a question. What was the question you posted yesterday?
Somewhere. So how was raising Justin?
Yeah, I think that was the question.
It's I was raising Justin. Well, I think we were really, really close as a family, and from day one, Justin was always very motivated, always striving to do his best in everything he took on. He was very much an athlete growing up, but he was also a good student. And kind of the unwritten rule we had, it was either you got all A's and B's on your report card or you didn't play.
Yeah.
And
maybe get A's and B's.
Justin got A's and B's, and he played. There were times it was really busy where we would be playing multiple sports at one time, where seasons overlapped, and whether it was basketball and soccer or football or, and then he just. I think both our kids, both Justin and Sarah, both were very accomplished athletes, and I think that really laid a really strong foundation for their leadership and their ability to put together really good teams and be really successful. And so I'm really proud of all the work that they put in doing that and striving for excellence. I mean, they accomplished so many great things on all their sports teams, and we're also very, very well accomplished academically. And but yet, we were all busy, but yet as a family, we always found the time to do a lot of really cool stuff, and we got to travel a lot, and we saw a lot of really cool things. And athletics and veterinary medicine and business just opened up so many great opportunities for us. So we had a blast.
Mm-hmm.
We had a blast, and I think for me, the coolest thing is that after all these years, we still work together on almost every project that we take on. And Justin became very involved in the business of veterinary medicine. Became very involved. We spent some time developing an app, that Silicon Valley based app, that we started working on that in 2012, 2013, and that's still flourishing today. We're still shareholders in that business. We aren't involved in it anymore, but during the pandemic, that app has done more remote consultations in veterinary medicine than any other app anywhere in the world. So that was a project that we worked on, and then of course Mavana, and then buying a couple other veterinary practices in the real estate, and then I had the opportunity to support Justin as he started in his real estate business.
Yep.
So it's been fabulous.
Yeah. See if there's a really quick question. So I know maybe you can talk about, because a lot of people that watch are either just getting started or have started and they're struggling through a phase and like, oh, should I give up, or should I just keep going, or should I quit, or what should I do? And I think you maybe go into how you kind of started your, I guess, the early mid 90s story through early 2000s stories on getting started, and then running into walls and having to run through walls and overcome a lot, and then to ultimately get that thing off the ground. Maybe go into that a little bit and see how we can help some people.
Yeah, I know Justin. I get to watch maybe half of Justin's podcasts, and just thinking about the story in education. For me to become a veterinarian, I had to go to a lot of schooling, and I think Justin understands that and supports that. But I had a very specific outcome. I had some really unique opportunities. I had some really unique challenges. And that could probably be a whole podcast just talking about some of those things I experienced. But I think in veterinary medicine, I think when I step back and just look at the world today, there's tremendous opportunity out there. And one of my close mentors, one of my close advisors, I think he told me this maybe 15 years ago. The opportunity of a lifetime comes around maybe once a week. And the thing about it is that most of the time you just don't recognize it. And so a lot of it is, number one, recognizing that opportunity and turning it into a vision. And, I think right now I just see so much opportunity. There's so much disruption going on in so many different industries that, we need new solutions. We need new ideas in so many different areas. And so all of those visions are important. And the way you approach it might not be the same way I approached it, because it was a different time. But and some of these visions that people talk about are, sometimes seem a little crazy, but they become reality. But the biggest thing that you have to do is you have to have the courage.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the courage to say yes, I can do that. And so too many people don't recognize the vision. Too many people don't have the courage. They find reasons why it won't work and make excuses for why it won't work. I remember when I started the idea of Mavana, Mixed Animal Veterinary Associates, and aggregating groups of equine and mixed animal practices, I had a lot of pushback on that. A lot of my close advisors, a lot of people I had a great deal of respect for, really thought that I was never going to be able to do that. And, fast forward maybe 5 years later, those same people are calling me back today, and they're saying, Scott, I'm not doubting that you can do it. Just tell me how you did it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's having the vision, having the courage to pursue it in spite of what other people tell you. And then I think lastly is just approaching it with urgency, because it's absolutely remarkable how fast time goes by. It's 30 years ago, right about now, that I graduated from veterinary school in Madison. And I remember that it took me so long to achieve my dream of becoming a veterinarian, and for me to be sitting here now thinking that 30 years went by, it's absolutely incredible. So urgency is really a key to, don't talk about doing it. You don't have to have everything perfect. You just have to follow that vision, take action, and start moving it forward.
So use some of you don't have to go into too much detail, I guess, but there's a lot of people that struggle or maybe are close to quitting but they're really close, or they might only be like 5 years away from a big time success. Like use some, just share some of those stumbling blocks you had in our some of the things you guys had to overcome. And again, you don't have to go into crazy details, and you probably can't go into crazy detail, but to give them a understanding that, oh, okay, everyone has to overcome different things. And you know, a lot of times people overcome a lot of similar things, just might be a little bit different of an area or, you know, whatever. But I don't know if you can name some of those things or just talk about some of those things from a high level to give them context of, okay, here's an actual example of, wow, he had overcome that, and that over that 6 or 7 or 10 year time span.
Well, I think as you're talking about that, I think the first thing that I remember was I joined Steve Cervantes and I, my partner. We've been together almost 30 years as practicing veterinarians, and we joined the original practice within 2 weeks of each other in 1992, and joined a practice in a good area that we thought was a very good practice for us. And in a short period of time, we became partners in the practice, and became frustrated in the way the practice is being run, became frustrated in just our role in the practice. We thought that once we became partners, we would be able to change the business model, change the way the practice was run. And we ran into some pretty big roadblocks to accomplishing that. And so as we started working through that, the original partnership over a couple year period of time dissolved, and Steve and I found ourselves being part of the practice for about 10 years. The practice dissolved. We lost the lease on the building we were in, and it was on December 31st, about 2000, I think it was, 1999 maybe it was. And then we had to load up all the stuff that we owned into an old semi-trailer, and I
remember this day.
We rented some space out of a boarding clinic, and we had to practice for about 60 days in a boarding kennel. And then our new building was built the end of February. That would have been in February of 2001, and we finally got the building up and running. And I think the first day we were open, we did like 30 surgeries because we had to catch up on this big backlog. And then, you know, things were going really well. And then the next thing that I remember happening that year was 2001, September 11th happened. And here we're sitting with this brand new building, a big mortgage on it, all these employees. And for about 30 days, all everybody did was sit in their house and watch CNN and didn't spend any money, and we probably, our revenue was probably a third that month of what we had expected to have. And you know, we rolled up our sleeves and we just went to work. And I think at some of those points, you just have to ignore all the extraneous noise that's going on out there and really just focus on the things that you have under your control, and do the very best job managing those things that you can do, and have faith and confidence in yourself. Develop your vision, have the courage to just keep moving forward. And so there were some pretty tough times, you know, when we were starting out, and you know, to think that here we are 20 years later, and we sold the practice for more money than I think we ever could have imagined that we would have made in veterinary medicine.
Read the comment on there quick. Massive buzzing you can hear.
Massive buzzing, bro?
Is it? Yeah, I think the phone or something the thing it's
thought
sitting in, I think, is buzzing. Is it still buzzing or no? Technical difficulties. Is it buzzing or no?
I think this thing is buzzing a little bit. But I don't know.
If they can hear it, then rip my phone out of there quick.
Sure. Here,
let's go like this. You're gonna use that, aren't you? That'll work. That'll be fine. Yeah, and I remember that I was like 4th grade, I think, or 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, somewhere in there when kind of all that stuff was going on. But I remember I didn't know like all the details of what was going on, but I could feel like the stress and the pressure of it. But you know, there's a lot of people that are probably, I mean, so you guys were like 3 or 4 or 5 years into that partnership when it went south. So now you're like, you got 3 or 4 or 5 years started, and then now you have a massive like kind of a setback. And then you're gonna build your own. Well, then you're operating a veterinary clinic. You don't have a clinic. You don't even have a clinic to operate out of. So that makes it tough there. And then you have the courage to be able to go out and build a 7,000, 8,000 square foot new building. and while that's being built, continue to not have a real place to practice. And then you get the building built and you're performing, doing everything well. And then 8 months later or 7 months later, September 11 happens, which for people that weren't around during September 11 was essentially, that next month was essentially like what happened during COVID, where no one was doing anything and there wasn't money going out to people at that point in time. So it was just, roll with it. There, I can play with it.
Okay.
So I think,
Because we can hear my laptop.
Gotcha. So I think that there's just a lot to be able to learn in that, or just to realize. Can you get it set up anywhere else? But I think there's a lot to learn in that, and realize that you're probably going through that, or there's ultimately nothing really to be scared of. You just have to be able to continue, like my dad had said, to continue to have the courage and continue to find ways to work through it, and continue to show up every single day and put in the work and put in the time, and then have the faith that all that's going to end up working out at some time or another, right? And so I think that's just a really big.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think too, you talk a little bit about fear, and you talk a little bit about courage, and I think that, the way I've always looked at it is that, I'll keep going. I think that I don't even think about being fearful or having fear. Really what I think about is just finding the courage to keep moving forward, and oftentimes these roadblocks that come up, they're not necessarily, I look at it more as an opportunity. I look at, these things happen, what can we learn from them, how do we keep moving on, and it's just part of the journey. And oftentimes you can't explain some of these things that happen, and I think Justin's very similar to in the way he responds to that, is just looking for opportunity, and how do we cross that bridge, and how do we move on to open the doors the next day and keep the lights on. I mean, sometimes going through some of these things, it's a success if you can get the doors open and you can turn the lights on. Mm-hmm. And then you have other days where everything you do is like hitting a grand slam home run. And but if you're not around,
you don't get the home runs, and so sometimes you got to hang on to get there.
You got to figure out a way to keep a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
I talk a lot about that all the time, is just having a seat at the table, whatever that means to you. But that means being on the other side of the closed door. Being at the table with the right people at the right time. I think sometimes there's a lot of luck that is involved with a lot of these things, but you also make a lot of your own luck. And if you stop thinking about it and you give up and you walk away from it, you're going to have a lot less luck happening than if you're coming to work every day and just keep grinding away at whatever it is that you do.
Yep. But then you guys got your business back on track. Probably, I don't know when. Was it 2002, 3, 4, or what?
Yeah, I think it took, probably within 5 or 6 months after September 11th. So probably as we got into 2002, 2003, I think business got, really good. And Rock County was a really good place. Janesville was a really good place to be in practice. And then we had the financial meltdown of 2008. And that was another one of those wake-up moments where a long-established General Motors plant here in Rock County closed rather abruptly with short notice, and overnight tens of thousands of really good paying jobs went away. And there was a period of time there in the fall of 2008 when I distinctly remember the financial system in our country was in such a precarious position. I remember thinking that are these credit cards that we're processing today for all these veterinary services that we're doing, are those credit card payments ever going to show up in our checking account? I mean, that's how tough it got at that point in time. And again, that was a time where the leadership group, my wife Nancy, Justin's mom, and Steve and Kevin, and we all got together, and we really need to redouble our efforts and focus on all those things that we have under our control. And I can't control what General Motors does. I have no control over the decisions that are being made in Washington, D.C. I have no control over the decisions being made in the state capital in Madison, Wisconsin. But I can control what I charge for my services. I can control how much inventory is on my shelf. I can control my accounts receivable, the amount of money that people owe me. And if you really put all your efforts into identifying those things that you can that can be very impactful in your business and your personal life, is focus on those and do those as well as you can. I have great faith and great confidence that everything's going to turn out all right. It's going to be fine.
And it took like 3 or 4 years to recover to get to where you were after, or to get to where you were before 08.
Yeah, our business shrunk by about 40% from, I would say, June. If I keep notes and stuff from our team, our management meetings, and if I look back to the spring of 2008, our biggest concerns were we didn't have enough desks and enough computers for all of our employees to sit at. We didn't have enough telephone lines coming in the building. We didn't have enough parking spots. And that was all the focus at that point in time. And then fast forward 6 months, all those issues went away. And it was June of 2011 before we bottomed out. And so it was almost 3 years before we bottomed out. But we survived. We survived that hard time. A lot of companies did not survive. Did not move. There was a lot of
part of
empty
it for us,
homes.
it was magnified because Janesville's 60 or 80,000 people,
Yeah.
and we had GM here close, which was like 10,000 jobs, right?
Probably altogether.
So I mean,
Yeah.
so that was it was magnified with that.
And then really starting in June of 2011, it was, the business just got back on track, and we were just in a really great space, and it culminated with a sale to PetVet last September.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the other thing that I never could have imagined that Movana, it was probably 10 times, it ended up to be 10 times what I ever imagined it would be. I never imagined that we would have 1,000 employees. I never imagined that it'd be almost 40 practices. And I think the one thing that I learned from that, I had some very modest goals when I formed Movana. And I think I really learned that, when you set your goals, boy, you need to set your goals even higher than you can even begin to imagine. Because there's a really good chance that you're going to hit those goals and then some. And I think that was one of the things that I really learned. And it's crazy how fast some of these things can happen.
That's what I've been telling people too, is the things that I wrote down. Well, I've been telling Rich this a lot, one of our painters. I've been telling him a lot because I'm just helping him, he wants to do some awesome things with over the next 10 or 15 years. And I started telling him, I'm like, the more that you can come up with what you want and come up with your goals and be very specific, and you write down those goals once a day, once a week, more than just sitting down and thinking about your goals. Just when New Year's comes, all of a sudden now you're focused on those, and now your actions will go after those to close down and close in on those goals. I mean, because things I would write down in 2016 and 2017 and then really, really focus on them and put in the work and the effort to get there, I didn't think I was going to accomplish till like 2025 or 2026 or 2027, and then by 2019 or 2020, they were already all accomplished, done, and now I'll move on to the next one. But it's being able to have, once again, big enough goals, but then be able to be focused on them, not just during New Year's or not just during, but all the time. Be focused on them all the time, every single day, and then you just have to break those goals down too, and say, okay, if this is my ultimate big goal, you got to be able to break it down and kind of back into it a little bit and break it down. Like, well, okay, what's the first step that I have to take, right? So, I think Modine, we've kind of talked about that a lot. I talk about that a lot with Ryder. Were you going to say something, Modine?
No, you remember when you said 50K units, how I get there? Then you said 49,000.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's what we've talked about this on maybe 10 or 12 podcasts ago, where I said if 50,000 units is the goal, okay, well, how do I get to break it down, right? To get to 50,000, I got to get to 49,999. I got to get to 49,998, right? And you keep breaking it down that way, and it's like, well, it starts by buying one unit tomorrow, right? I mean, now if I want to buy one unit, what's the steps I have to go to buy the one unit? Well, tomorrow I probably got to go look at properties, right, and start evaluating properties, start putting offers out, and then I get the one deal. Now I have to multiply that over and over again, and hopefully you start buying 16 units and then 160 units to take bigger pieces. But that's really what you have to be focused on every single day, to put in the work to then close the gap on those goals. So,
and I think that's where urgency is so important. You can't wait for something to happen. You have to start, because you said start tomorrow. Go out and buy one unit tomorrow or whatever it is. And I think the other thing when it comes to urgency too is in setting goals. I think that with Movana we accomplished maybe 10 years worth of work in 1 year. in 1.5 years, something like that. And I thought that I would be involved with Movana for another 5 or 10 years. And, I had the good fortune to be able to exit the company, be able to go on and pursue other opportunities. But I think it's just how rapidly those things happen. And the key to getting started is you don't have to have a really good solid plan. You have to have this vision. You have to have this idea of where you're going to end up. And I see so many people will spend so much time on developing this elaborate business plan and being so detailed. And, I think it's fine that people over time develop business plans, but they're really a living document. And almost every business I have, I do what I call a one-page business plan. And it might be 6 or 8 bullet points on, this is what I want to accomplish. And these are my goals. And then you got to start. You start at 1 o'clock this afternoon. You start at 4 o'clock, whatever. You do this at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you have to form an LLC, what are you waiting for? Don't talk about forming it. Just form it. Get it started. And because it's absolutely remarkable how fast these things can happen. Sometimes you just have to get out of the way and let them happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that, your story kind of helps a little bit just because people see somebody when they've already had the success, because nobody really knew them before they had the success or whatever, or they hear these success stories, but they don't realize that, you had to go through, all this stuff to get there. And, you look at, like your story at the late 90s, you told in early 2000s and late 2000s and then early 2010 and coming out of '08 and whatever. And then, just a handful of years later, you're part of a company with 90 other shareholders that, you're leading and you were one of the founders, and then it, ultimately lead it to a sale that's a 9-digit, mid 9-digit figures. And it's, you truly can accomplish way more than what you think. By just putting in that work and showing up every day. Yeah,
and I think one of the other things too is to think about the people that you put around yourselves, and you need mentors. You need really good professional advisors. You need to continuously build your network and build out all of your contacts. Oftentimes people ask me what it is that I do and how am I so successful, and oftentimes one of my answers is I just connect the dots. Mm-hmm. Because I know a lot of people. I always, when there's an opportunity that's presented to me, I always try to find a way to say yes. Mm-hmm. And I'm a great believer in those opportunities are presented to you for a reason. Oftentimes you don't know what that reason is, but it might lead to meeting somebody who knows somebody whose brother knows somebody that opens up the door. And you can never build your network big enough and your contacts big enough, because you just never know. You never know what part of your journey is. And so always, so many people say, say no to this stuff, say no to this stuff, say no to this stuff. But I think Justin and I both, we have had so many great opportunities, and we've been able to do so many cool things because we found a way to say yes. And I think I've gotten a little bit more selective. But right now, at this point in time, I'm kind of going through a reset right now, and I'm back to what worked well for me. I'm going out and I'm just calling all the people I've known. I just keep calling people and talking to them and having the discussion and reconnecting the dots. And it's just unbelievable the things that open up to you. Mm-hmm. Opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and you have to develop the ability to recognize those opportunities.
Would you rather 10 million friends or $10 billion?
Would I rather have 10 billion friends or $10 billion?
Yeah.
Well, I think 10 billion friends is probably represents a lot. That's only $1 per person.
Right.
So
this is my thing. I said I'd rather have the 10 billion friends, because
I think if I had 10 billion friends and they're worth $100 a piece, that's a lot more.
Right. This is the same thing I had, and then I had other people arguing with me online. Why would you not take the $10 billion? I'm like, well, because you're not getting it.
I believe that it's all about contacts. It's all about contacts and who you know, and and I think I really learned that in veterinary medicine, because the profession of veterinary medicine is relatively small. And if I was looking to hire a veterinarian, everybody puts an ad out to hire a veterinarian, but what I would typically do is I get on the phone and call people. And invariably, I'd make 10 calls and I would probably find 3, 4, 5 people that are looking for a job, by talking to my contact list. So, yeah, $10 billion, yeah, it's a lot of money. I don't even know how much money that is, but the way I approach things, it's through building the network. The network.
Modine, what do we have for questions right now? Let's see. This rolls back to last week, right? Some of these questions. Let's see what we have. Well, you want to take a shot at this? You want to take a shot at some questions?
Sure, I'd love to take a shot at some questions.
So first question is, what is your suggestion for getting investors? Is the best method to make a fund or do individual contacts with investors? Maybe ignore the second part and just answer the first part.
Yeah, I think what's a suggestion for getting investors? So I think when I think about investors, I don't necessarily think about somebody that's actually going to give me money. It's somebody that's going to invest in one of my projects. And we built Mavana not necessarily by getting dollars. We built by Mavana by people bringing their practices and merging their practice in. So
actually, that's a great concept of the 10 billion friends or the $10 billion because it wasn't really money. It wasn't necessarily. I mean, yes, there was some, but I mean, it was all those contacts that then turned into the big. Without the contacts, none of that big win would have come.
It never would have happened. So when I talk about investors, I think investors can be viewed in many different ways. And so from my perspective, it was getting those people to invest in my vision by bringing their practices under our corporate umbrella. And so a lot of it had to do with, I think another thing that's really important is to look at it that you have to have the highest of ethics. You have to always try to do the right thing. You have to always try to treat people the way you want to be treated or better than you want to be treated. I think one of my greatest rewards in life is to see other people be successful and to see other people succeed. And, I know, some of the people that are working with Spaulding Group right now, I've known them for a long time, and they are just in a position where they're doing remarkable things. And for me, I get more satisfaction out of that than the money that comes along with that. And I look back at some of the investors that brought their practices into Mavana and how handsomely rewarded they were. And it was life-changing for them in so many different ways. And that's a big part of my reward. And so when you talk about how's the best way to get investors, there's lots of different ways to get investors. There's lots of different ways you can view investors. It can be an investor can write out a check. An investor can be, I think my two partners, Steve Cervantes and Kevin Cryer, I'm grateful that they wanted to practice veterinary medicine and they were big producers and they brought in a lot of revenue. And they allowed me to manage the practice and to do the things that I was really interested in doing and do the things that I was good at. And they were really well.
Their investment was the production.
Their investment was the
right?
production.
Yeah.
That's how they invested in the business, and they were handsomely rewarded for that. So, I don't know if that exactly answers the question, but from my perspective, there's lots of different ways to think about investors, and I think the way I would approach it is again, what does it mean to have an investor in your vision, not necessarily in your business, but in your vision.
Well, and I know what you mean when you're using investor as different. With a different meaning when you just said some of that stuff right there, but some people still might not realize that the investor might not bring actual money. It might be it might be the production, it might be hours worked, it might be their thoughts, it might be their believing in your vision to share it with other people in their network, right? So that's an investment. So being able to use, and actually, some people need a different type of investor that just brings money early on. When they're just getting started, they might need an investor who just signs on loan docs. They might need an investor who, just puts in some work. They might need an investor. So that's a good. We probably haven't really spent too much time talking about that in that way on this show or breaking it down, but in that way. But that's a really good thing for everyone to realize is okay, because I think so many people just think of investors as just bringing dollars when really you kind of limit yourself at that point, or not. You might limit the size you can grow your business to, or the success, or it's really being able to get over just getting over just dollars, and it's so much more than just dollars, really.
Yeah, and I think just as I think about that, I think that.
But that will then ultimately lead to more dollars if you can get over the dollars.
I think if you're really solid in your vision and you have the courage to really follow your vision, I think the dollar part is the easiest part of it. And I think we learned that with Mavana is very early on. I mean, we had people knocking down the door to buy us, to invest in us, and but it wasn't because It wasn't because we had investors that brought a lot of money to the table. It's because we had a lot of investors that were invested in the vision.
Yep.
And then the money part became easy. It became really easy.
Yeah, for sure. Dean, we need that next question. Oh, I'm good.
So I maybe think of investor in a little different perspective.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, Marty. Go to the next question. I talk about that one. I don't save that one for next week.
Okay.
Oh, we already talked about that one a little bit. Oh, here we go. I think Josh Eastman asked this one.
Josh, he asks this pretty regularly, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He knows what the answer is too. Doesn't he?
So the question for those of the listening that can't see the screen is, who finishes better this NFL season, Dallas or Green Bay? I think it's pretty evident. Me and my dad are big, huge Packer fans. The picture that Maudine's going to use for this podcast, I think, is the one that we're in front of when we're out in Gillette Stadium.
Awesome
With
trip.
Packer stuff on, but I don't know. You want to handle this one for Josh?
Well, if this is for Josh, I mean, I think that it's hard to believe that the Cowboys have an old, washed-up Green Bay coach down in Dallas. Kind of limping through. We moved on from McCarthy a long time ago. Much better, improved coaching staff. I mean, we're gonna have our second Hall of Fame quarterback in a row conclude his career either maybe this season or in the relatively near future. But I'm highly confident that the Packers are going to go on and have a third NFL Hall of Fame quarterback in a row.
Jordan Love?
I don't know if it's Jordan Love. You don't know. Whoever thought that Aaron Rodgers could accomplish what he accomplished? I look at the legacy of Lambeau Field, of the Green Bay Packers.
Which is going to be full again this year,
It's
by the
going to
way.
be full. It's an awesome place to go. So I think that's really all I've got to say about that. I don't think I even have to make a prediction.
I got Packers 12-4, and I got Dallas probably sitting at like 6-12.
Well, isn't there 17
No, it's 17.
games?
Yeah, 12-5.
12-5?
I would say 12-5.
Or 13-4.
Maybe 13-4. Yeah, 13-4.
losses, yeah.
Then Dallas, so there's 17 games. I'm gonna say Dallas is 6-11.
Brady.
Oh.
That's all I know.
Tom Brady, that's the answer.
Plays for the Buccaneers. Next question. See what else we have for questions in here. Who would win in a horse race? What does this mean?
That's my question.
What does that mean?
The fastest horse.
I mean, between you two,
What
Yeah.
if we're each riding a horse or what? What horse do we get to ride?
I don't know. You.
So who's the better jockey?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh.
I think that would be laughable if either of us got on a horse.
Well, that's a really good question, though, because I think that we have a little competition going on all the time. And we look at the different projects that we're working on. And I think the cool thing about it is that if I don't win the horse race, Justin does. So, I kind of watch the values of the different businesses, and all the real estate and everything was kind of creeping up on the value of the veterinary business. But then all of a sudden we had some really good things happen in the veterinary business. And I got a little bit of a cushion again right now. So if that's the horse race you're talking about, I might be a little bit ahead right now, but we're, who knows what happens when you enter the home stretch.
Yeah. There we go. There's your question. There's your answer, Maudine. Next question. Oh, hey, cool. Did you come up with this one too?
Yeah.
That
Well,
was Ryder.
Oh, Ryder did?
well, I think
So question for people that can't see the screen on Instagram or just listening to this podcast. Why did you start a vet business talking to my dad?
I always thought veterinary medicine was just a really good business. And I think that's been really proven to be true during the pandemic. The number of people that have gone out and have added pets to their household. I think about how the American public holds their pets in such high esteem now. They become their kids. For me, growing up as a kid on the farm, we had dogs, but they were outside dogs. They were never in our house. And now here I am, after practicing for 30 years, my dog sleeps in my bed with me. So that's how much has changed in my
90-pound German Shepherd, by the way.
named Link. And Link's become a very famous dog, actually.
Yeah, he is.
And so I think about how much that has changed in one generation, how these pets have become just vital or important members of our family. And the other thing that I did is I looked back and I looked around and I saw so many veterinarians that just had great businesses, but they were just so poorly run. Mm-hmm. And so I saw the opportunity to come in and really apply really good business principles to veterinary practice. And I think one of the things that really set me apart is rather than me having to be the veterinarian that saw every patient, I trained my successors, and I had my successors filling my shoes very early in my career, so I didn't have to be the one seeing every animal, doing every surgery to generate the money. I mentored, I developed the people to do the professional procedures that we do. I developed leaders across all of our practices, allowing them to manage our pharmacy, to manage our marketing and public relations, and so I was really kind of the captain of the ship, and I put really good people in place, and trained them or instructed them as far as what the business expected them, so they knew what their job was, and kind of stayed out of their way and let them do what they were really good at. And so I just saw a really big opportunity in veterinary medicine to turn into a really good business, and I think we've really proven that to be very, very true.
Yeah. I was just thinking, because I know Marshall Wilkinson.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he knows. I don't know if Marshall's still watching or not right now. Marshall, if you're still watching, you can comment. He knows the Antec guys.
Oh, really?
I don't know
or
which.
VCA?
I don't. Well,
Bob Anton.
yeah, I think he knows those guys.
Oh, really?
But he knows, and I dropped the name because Darren. That's where Darren was, right?
Darren Nelson. Yeah.
So he knew Darren Nelson. And,
Darren Nelson
yeah.
went on to Pathway Partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
Small
knows.
world.
Yeah, he knows, and I can't remember the connection that he has with him. I don't remember if it's family somehow or.
Oh, interesting.
I think maybe Marshall's uncle or something had worked and was a part of that whole thing.
VCA was one of the first companies that started aggregating
Yeah.
veterinary practices 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So.
Great story.
Yeah. Next. As a kid, what did you think you wanted to do for a living? Was this for Dad again? All right, yeah. I'll let you go first.
Well, I think as a kid, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier. I thought you had to be some superhuman person to be a veterinarian. I was a product of the 1970s, and the 1970s was a much different time. And I had a lot of fun in high school. I didn't have the best grades in high school. So it got to the point, I worked all the time, worked on the farm, worked for my family businesses, but also just had a good time. I lived life to its fullest, just like we still continue to do. And but then it became challenging for me to go on and continue my education. Initially, out of high school, I had some obstacles I had to overcome. But again, I didn't really view it as an obstacle or a roadblock. And
what was the obstacle?
well, I got in. I went to UW Stout right out of high school, and I was there one semester, and I was essentially kicked out of. Of college.
Maudine wants more. Why? I don't think a lot of people really know this.
I really didn't go. I didn't go to class. Like I said, it was the 1970s. We partied a lot, caused a lot of trouble, and I got myself into some things that I just that I never thought I'd be able to do. And it was either you're gonna have to face the consequences of this, or you can leave town. And I said, okay, I'm out of here.
So after one semester, you left.
After one semester, I had a grade point average of 0.6 when I left UW Stout. And then there was an incident a couple of years later where I met a veterinarian who came out to the farm that I was working at and just treated me and my animals incredibly disrespectfully. And I stood there thinking that day, it was a cold January day in 1982. And I remember thinking that if this guy became a veterinarian, anybody can become a veterinarian. And so I went to UW-Madison. The veterinary school wasn't even built yet. They were just starting to build it. And I met two very influential people in my life, Dr. Susan Highland, who I'm still a close personal friend with, and Dr. Barney Easterday, who was the first dean, and they encouraged me. But I had to complete my education. And so I thought, I'm just going to go to UW-Madison and major in animal science. And, well, I filled out my application, and I didn't get accepted. I couldn't get in. And so I went back to Sue Highland, and she sent me to the Office of Special Students. I said, yeah, that's right, I'm a special student. So somebody there befriended me, and she got me into the college as a special student, but I had to be a special student. By that meaning, I had to register for class at last, and I had to take whatever classes was there. I had to get my grade point average up to 2.0 from 0.6, and that's not easy to do.
It's a long ways.
So I ended up completing my degree in animal science. I graduated with highest distinction. And I had appealed initially, went to the College of Agriculture when they didn't accept me, and I met Dean Sledge, I think it was Dean George Sledge, Dean of Students, kind of laughed at me. He says, "You're going to go to veterinary school? It's like
You got a 0.6
you got a
grade point average,
0.6
kid.
grade point average. Go away."
Which reminds me, in my mind, it's like the kid on Toy Story hanging onto the slide and Santa pushes him down. That's what's happened to you trying to get into vet school.
And then, but come to find out, I graduated with highest distinction from undergrad in 1986. And the morning of graduation, I was hosted for breakfast at the home of Dean Sledge.
Did he remember you?
I don't think he really remembered me, but it was quite satisfying for me to be in that situation.
Yeah.
So I forgot what the question was, but
Why'd you start a vet business? Right?
No,
Why'd you?
yeah.
Oh, kid, would you? Yeah.
so I guess for me, it's part of my journey. There's a lot of times there where I could have just said, no, I'm not going to do this. It's not worth it. So I think that's why I started talking about that. It's just another example of when life throws those hurdles in your way, you find a way to say yes and keep moving forward. And it opened up lots of great opportunities for me. So
For me, what did I think? I think that there was a lot. I think initially I wanted to be like a cop or a firefighter when I was like 4. You have those. I think every kid wants to do that, right? And then I think there's a time, there's a short time period. I think I wanted to be a veterinarian, real short time period. And then I think then the big one was I wanted to play in the NFL. I mean, that was that was like my one that I wanted to do, be a professional athlete.
Well, you still want to do that when you grow up.
Still want to do that when I grow up. Yeah, I'm waiting to grow a couple more inches. And then I think there's a short period of time there in high school or something where I was like, I'll be a PE teacher. I think there was another point in time where I wanted to be a sports coach. There's another point in time. I think that's about it. And then until like I was 19, and that's when I stumbled upon all this stuff, and I became obsessed with it. And then it was clear as day what I was going to do.
Well, I remember an occasion where Justin was repairing a mailbox. And this mailbox, it was at the clinic. And
so growing up, I had to pick the weeds at the
Mow the
clinics,
lawn.
mow the lawn, change the light bulb, change the furnace filters, do stuff like put in a mailbox.
that's where he got all of his training in real estate management.
But this was actually during college, believe it or not. This was like my sophomore year of college.
And this mailbox was hit by a car, I don't know how many times. So it was like the third time, and we decided that was finally enough. And I remember one of those times when Justin was trying to put it back up, and he says, I hate doing this. He says, I'm stuck working on this mailbox, and all I want to do is build skyscrapers.
I can't even build a goddamn mailbox.
Can't even take care of a mailbox.
Yeah.
There were some choice words in there,
Yeah. Well, I couldn't figure out how to put it together. Then I put one together, and I don't know if the wind blew it over. So then I got this like sturdy one. I'm like, I'm gonna put concrete in this. I think I put concrete.
I think you did.
I think I dug a huge hole and concreted it up. And like 2 weeks later, that's when the car smoked it.
Yeah, or a truck. There was like
It was a car accident, and the car smoked it, broke it off at the post. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
There was like nothing left to be found.
No, it was like the mailbox like disappeared.
So that's why we got a post office box.
That was only 10 years ago.
Yeah.
12, yeah, maybe 10 or 11 years ago.
Yeah.
What's the next question?
We have one.
You want to go first?
Well, yeah, I
What
think
question is for people that can't see? What was the hardest thing you went through as a kid? How did you overcome it?
Yeah, I guess when somebody asks me a question like that, I think hardest things, my struggles, I don't really focus on those struggles. I couldn't tell you what I think about the successes that I have. I think that's just the way I approach things. And I don't, when I think we've talked about some of the roadblocks that we've had here. For me being a kid, I guess my memory of being a kid is I had a great childhood. I grew up on the farm. I grew up in West Central Wisconsin, and I don't remember there being a lot of hardships. I really don't. And but I think that was a little bit the way I approach life. Is I focus on the positive. I focus on the things that are good. I don't think about failure or fear or anything along those lines. So I think most of that is just erased from my memory banks. If there were challenges there that I don't remember, or that's who I am. That's how I'm wired. I just move on to the next thing. So I don't know if you have an answer.
Yeah, I don't
to that.
know. It's hard for me to think of one too that's just specific. Other than remember the time I tripped mom and when I was like third grade, and the cool thing to do when you were in third grade in Milton was, I think Grant Stewart started this everywhere. When the person was walking, you'd kick their foot to get their foot to hit the back of the other ankle, and then they'd trip. So we did that all the time, and I did that to my mom when we were shopping, and then my dad found out. And
I don't remember that.
I didn't get to play I had to miss a soccer tournament.
Really?
Yeah, that was devastating.
Wow.
But no, I mean, I don't know either. I mean, even when things go bad today with businesses and stuff like, I mean, I don't know. It's because I don't really think that way either.
I think one
way
thing that we talked a lot about we talked about being Teflon. And so when you have the people that don't want to see you succeed, the people that hate you, the people that, or when bad things happen, you just have to put on this coat of Teflon and it just slides right off from you. We always talked a lot about that as growing up, and I think as part of that coat of Teflon that you wear is that when those things happen, it just slides off from you and you move forward. It's part of your journey, and you don't. So I think
COVID happens, when whatever. So all these things that are out of control or whatever, it's just like, well, then you just and then you just wake up and do what you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have rather gone to jail last year than to shut down. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good answer. So what do we got? Is that it?
That's good.
What time is it?
It's
1. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, I got to go look at a property up in Monona. So, all right. Well, love you, man. Thanks
for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
I hope it was good.
So yeah, yeah. Thanks for joining us. Love my dad a lot. I'm glad he could get in here and be on the podcast. And maybe now that some of you guys have heard some of his background and stuff like that, maybe we can have him on again in a handful of episodes, and you can come up with more specific questions, maybe directly for him, because it's a little bit different experience and all that stuff. So, but yeah, the 23rd episode of the Justin Spaulding Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on YouTube. Go check us out. Go check my Instagram out. Wherever, follow us. Leave some questions. If you know of any other people that would be good guests on the show, you can leave those in the comments too, and we'll start to reach out to some of those people, and maybe let our audience choose a little bit too who they want to see come on the show. Grant Cardone. But thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. We'll see you. Have a great Memorial Day week.